Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here. And we're finally talking about her today, boys. One of the most miserable ships to play in game currently. The one, the only, the Tier 5 American battleship, the Oklahoma. Now, the Oklahoma is a Nevada-class battleship. She's a real steel ship. She was present for Pearl Harbor. She was sunk at Pearl Harbor. She capsized. Well, she partially capsized. Her mast stopped her from completely flipping over. And there's a lot of really interesting stories about how they managed to get the crew out of her. Some very absolutely horrifying conditions inside the ship. Of course, you can imagine being stuck inside this ship as she's partially capsized, and the rescue efforts are really fascinating how they managed to get so many out. And of course, unfortunately, they didn't get everybody out of the ship in time. And yeah, it's one of the sides of Pearl Harbor you don't really hear about too much. You hear about the attacks and stuff, but you don't really read too many of the accounts or hear too many of the accounts of the rescue efforts afterwards. Usually the movies show like a minute or two of it, but if you really go into depth and read about the efforts made to save the crews, it's some truly heroic and horrifying stuff. So I would encourage you guys to dig into that more. So, real still historical ship, so naturally, as goes with most of these ships, she has to be mediocre to terrible. And the Oklahoma, oh boy, she started mediocre, but man, today, good lord, she ain't good, boys. And this ship was given out for free. I believe you can still purchase her in the shop for whatever a Tier 5 is going for these days. And she's not worth it just up here at the front. Absolutely not. So we're going to talk about her, talk about what's wrong with her, and how she could definitely easily be improved and made into quite the solid premium ship in today's World of Warships. And if you are considering purchasing her, you're going to get to see what she's like in the footage in the background. And again, we'll talk about how she plays and all today. So, first off, Tier 5 American battleship. Tier 5 it's something today. And Tier 5 has, not recently, but in the past couple of years, they've added in bots to Tier 5 and below, because so many players, they rush through Tier 5 and they usually play Tier 6 up. The average tier played is like Tier 7.5 in this game, so there's not really too many people playing at mid-tier anymore. Most are like Tier 7, Tier 8, Tier 9, Tier 10. So you might think, well, Sealord, if there's bots at Tier 5, surely that means, that's easy damage for you. You gotta have a ship that can do damage in the first place, though. And keep in mind, when I say bots, most of the cases, it's like 1 or 2 DDs aside might be a bot. If you play at like, of course, at midnight or 2 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, yes, there's going to be more bots at Tier 5. But from my experiences, it's 1 or 2 bots at Tier 5. If you go down and play like Tier 3, Tier 4, yeah, it's a bit more. But Tier 5, about 1 or 2. Again, per side from my experience. So, Oklahoma. She is a promising ship if you enjoy brawling. Why? So, her secondary battery guns, you can get those out to 8.3 kilometers if you build into them. And we're starting with the pros if you haven't been able to catch that. She has 18 5-inch guns. Now, these 5-inch guns are, of course, the same caliber that are found on the higher tier American battleships that are also good secondary ships, like the Massachusetts and the Ohio, if you want to build into that, Georgia, if you want to build into that as well. They're the same caliber, not the same gun, but the same caliber, which means that down here at Tier 5, they still pin 21 millimeters of armor. And at Tier 5, that's pretty darn good, because it's Tier 5. You don't have a lot of thickly armored ships just yet. Well, of course, they're thickly armored. There's some fat boys down here, but you can pin a lot with 21 millimeters of pin down here. So, 18 of those guns, 9 per side. That's not bad. It's a little on the low side, but hey, most of the Tier 5 battleships, 8.3 is a dream for them. Now, of course, we have had more secondary ships get added down here, like the Agincourt, which is a very good secondary battleship. But still, by Tier 5 standards, that's quite good. You also have 10 14-inch guns. You have 10 356mm guns, which, again, that's pretty good. And, well, her heal's better. She does have an improved heal. She can repair 18% of citadel damage versus 14%. And it has a pretty quick cooldown time, too. It cools down, and again, with the flags and such, 76 seconds. That's not bad. That's not bad at all. 76-second reload time on a heal. And, well, range is pretty good too. If you don't want to take the artillery plottering module, because you want to take the secondary module, you can get your main guns out to 17.1 kilometers base, and you can take the artillery plottering module to get it out much further. So that there, ladies and gents, that's where the good ends. Everything else, not so good about this ship. And even some of the good has gotten bad over the years. So let's talk about the bad, then we'll talk about what's changed. The bad. You do have 10 14-inch guns. You also have a darn near 40-second reload time. You have a 38-second reload time on these 14-inch guns. 38 seconds. If you guys remember, in yesterday's top 5 video, we talked about the Texas and how having a 34-second reload time on her 10 14-inch guns was miserable. Imagine 4 more seconds for the same caliber of gun. And here's the kicker, they're worse. These 14-inch guns are worse than the Texas 14-inch guns, and are way worse than New York's 14-inch guns. Well, they both have the same shell. This one doesn't. This one uses the old stock New York shell, which has terrible AP pins. If a battleship is more than like 11 kilometers, 10 kilometers away from you, good luck pinning their armor belt. It ain't going to happen. You will shatter against their main armor belts, usually. And again, we're talking about just 10, 11 kilometers out, which is longer by Tier 5 standards, but that's still pretty darn close. So, that means that if you want to do damage to battleships at range, you have to get the shells to land on the the bow, the stern, the weak points, the upper armor belt, the superstructure. And with Tier 5 battleship guns, that ain't really easy. And you have a 38-second reload time. So, yeah. Good luck with that. That, of course, leads to your main battery guns being incredibly frustrating to use, and lackluster if your engagement ranges stick out to those longer ranges. Now, granted, this is Tier 5, so typically 13-ish kilometers is where things kind of hang about. Still outside of your main gun's sweet zone, but the closer they are, the easier it is to get the shells to go where you want them to go. Again, it's Tier 5, so it's more of a suggestion of where you want them to go. But yeah, so that's the guns. And the speed isn't great. It's a standard battleship, 20 knots, but I mean, hey, it's Tier 5. These ships are slow as well. The other ships are slow as well. Maneuvering, she doesn't get to retain her speed like most of the other American standard type battleships. You will be crawling at 14 knots if you decide you want to turn. So make sure you know where you want to go, because if you try to dance around the shells, you're going to be going 14 knots and they're going to run you down and now you're dead. So yeah. Now the secondaries. Oh, AA, it's Tier 5. AA, it's not anything, so big surprise there. The secondary guns, the things that were good on this ship back in the day. Now keep in mind, this is a pre-Commander reworked secondary ship. So, her secondaries, back in the day when I reviewed the ship for the first time, they had the same accuracy as the old Massachusetts and Ohio and Georgia secondaries. Now, if you weren't around pre-10.0, the American secondaries back in the day were laser pointers. Like, the shells went where the AI gunners were aiming. Like, you could literally see, back in the day, Massachusetts, Georgia shells, especially when you get closer to the enemy ships, they were all hitting in one circle around the upper armor of the target ship, because that's where the AI gunners aim, the dead center point of the ship, around the upper armor belt. And, like, the German secondaries and the other secondaries, because secondaries, they were more accurate back in the day, but they weren't that accurate. You wouldn't really see them actually aiming for that. But with the American battleships, you could see where they were aiming at, because that's where the shells were going. So back in the day, in this Tier 5 battleship, if a destroyer popped up 8 kilometers away from you, 7 kilometers away from you, and they're trying to do the Unga Boonga Torp Rush that so many Tier 5 DDs could do, you could click on them and watch your secondaries melt the man in a few seconds. However, today, that's not how secondaries work anymore. Secondaries now have to build up their accuracy over a time of roughly 45 seconds. And they start from this insanely just terrible dispersion, and they slowly crank down. Now we're at Tier 5 where DDs reign supreme. They're fast, they're nimble, they can pop smoke and get out of there. So as long as the DD player isn't at like, the last third of his HP, as long as he doesn't stay within your secondaries for 45 seconds, which is quite a long time in this game, they're just going to leave. And you'll have done minimal damage to them. Again, unless it's a bot, or unless they can't count to 45, or they don't notice the shells getting closer to their ship. Or if they're stuck, yeah, sure. The secondaries will do their thing, but still, most DD players aren't going to stay within your secondary range for 45 seconds. And keep in mind, too, even when those 45 seconds are built up, the secondaries are still roughly, I think, 10%-ish. I think it's really like 9.7 something less accurate than what they were beforehand. So they're still not the laser pointers once you have that 45-second build-up time done. So the big pickup about this ship back in the day, the fact that you were a Tier 5 battleship with some good DD repellent, is gone, essentially. Now, against other Tier 5 battleships, they do come within your secondary range and stay there for some time. Yeah, the secondaries will still put in the work, but it's getting within secondary range. Because you're slow, you can't run them down. And now we have quite a few Tier 5 battlecruisers that can easily run you down. And they can dictate the terms of the engagement, and they can just not get within your secondary range, and now you have to rely on your crappy main battery guns with a 38-second reload time that you can't really do much about. So, yeah. And a 38-second reload time with terrible AP and very poor accuracy because it's a Tier 5 battleship, so, yeah. It ain't that good no more, boys, sadly. This is a ship that has absolutely been murdered by the changes that have come to the game. So what could be done to fix this? Well, you can start off by smashing like 6 seconds off of that reload time. The ship has terrible AP, and it's still 14-inch guns, so against most cruisers it just zips right on through because cruisers are like made of paper mache at this tier. So you can smash that off, take that down to like 32 seconds base. And again, you can't get it down any lower without adrenaline rush. So yeah, I think 32 seconds base would be fine because you still do have the secondaries, and that is a lot of DPM once you do get within secondary range. I think the Texas needs to go back down to 30, and it's got the good AP, So I think that would be a fair spot for the AP for the guns to be at now, especially considering you have to rely on them a lot more nowadays. The secondaries, given today's World of Warships and such, I still think that they are all right. They are alright if you take the main battery reload down to 32. I think you should leave them as is. If they don't want to take the main battery down to 32, then, well, they need to give it the New York's AP. Because, again, it doesn't make any sense why it has terrible AP and then a terrible load time, especially considering we have ships with way more guns with lower reload times as well. So, yeah, I don't really understand what's up with the reload time on the guns, especially again considering that the secondaries have been bonked pretty hard. So I think that would be the easiest thing to do. The other thing would be you could extend the secondary range to like 9 if you really want to, but I think even by tier 5 standards that's really pushing it. But again, if you don't want to touch the main battery reload time for whatever reason, I think that will be something to do. Give them more range, give them a little bit lower reload, and I think then at that point you might have a more enjoyable ship at this tier. So those are the 3 things. Bonk the reload down to 32 and the main battery guns, give the New York's AP, or extend the secondary range and give it a little bit of buff to the reload time. Any one of those 3 things I think would be enough to make the ship a lot more competitive, or not even competitive, just enjoyable for this tier, because it's quite miserable right now, and this is obviously a premium that I would say don't touch with a 10-foot pole, because it's just going to be pain and suffering for you if you want to take it out. If you have one, take it out and see how you do with it. So guys, that's my 2 cents on the Oklahoma. Let me know what you guys think about it in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. I want to be to 50,000 subscribers, and I cannot thank you guys enough for that. Hope you guys have a wonderful wonderful Tuesday, and wonderful rest of your week. I will be live streaming here tonight on the channel, so make sure to come out for that on both Twitch and YouTube. You guys have a great rest of your week. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.